Welcome back to another episode of the the unofficial Squarespace Entrepreneur Podcast. My name is Omari Harabin. I'm your host, founder of SQSPthemes.com. And today we're talking with Ben Manley of Knapsack Creative, also StorySite.co, where they create StoryBrand ready website templates using Squarespace. So I thought Ben would be a great guest to have. Since we're often talking about Squarespace templates over here. And I think he's got some really interesting insights to share as to how he's been able to systemize his business and where and how he focuses his time and energy to be able to do what he does. So without any further ado, I'm going to let Ben introduce himself, and we're going to just jump straight into the conversation.
Sure. Yeah. And thanks for having me. And just before I even answer that, I just want to say thanks for all the tools you put out there. Just as a quick example, Lightbox Anything is amazing, and our team uses that a lot. So yeah, I really appreciate all the stuff you're putting out there.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And I guess a little bit about me and Knapsack. I'm I've been a designer pretty much my whole life. Kind of started even as a kid, just doing design for different companies or organizations around town. I just loved it so much. And eventually that grew into me, doing design for other people and other agencies and stuff like that. Even at, a large university, kind of having a team and stuff like that. But eventually I kind of felt like this push that I really wanted to be able to choose my own tools and wanted to kind of have more control over the process and make things super efficient. And so, kind of working my university job alongside doing my freelance work when I had young kids, it got to the point where, for me, I try to keep my work hours to a minimum if I can. So I was working about 60 hours a week then, 20 hours in freelance, 40 hours at work.
Wow.
And I was like, I kind of have to choose one or the other. And I was making the same income with both at that point. So I was like, well, kind of makes sense to work the 20 hours and make the same as the 40 hours. So
Yeah.
I kind of did like a 3-month test, to kind of see if I could switch over to that, and kind of did that test and passed. And so I went with it.
Wow. So it sounds like you've been making websites for a while, man. Like it sounds like maybe the 90s. How far do we go back?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess technically, yeah, because let's see, I was born in 86, probably around when I was 9. So 95, I think I learned my first HTML, which is crazy to think about. My dad had this black and white laptop that he brought home from his engineering job, and I just got to play around with it. He brought some book home, HTML for Dummies or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been fun, and yeah, just connecting with Squarespace, eventually discovering that was super helpful. We were fortunate to be one of the first, like 3 or 4 people on that original specialist list back when it was just a bullet list on a web page.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right. That makes sense, because I'm like I've seen Knapsack Creative. It's like somewhere in my subconscious somewhere. But yeah,
Great.
it does go back to that specialist directory, the OG one.
Yep.
So yeah, fill me in on like StorySite and how that came to be, and the whole concept behind that.
Sure. Yeah. So just in relation to Knapsack, just so you can understand that, for people who
Yeah.
don't know what Knapsack is, we have a team of 5 of us now, and we're solely building websites on Squarespace. That's our main business. And so I kind of we're building the Squarespace sites, and we have a great process we really enjoy doing, and our clients enjoy it. But I was kind of noticing some weaknesses because we focus mostly on design. So we keep seeing, people bring us their content or their text, and we do some little tweaks to it here and there to make it a little better. But I'm still like, man, the weakest point of the sites we're building really is the content, and that's super important. And, it's just as important as the design.
Mhm.
So I was like, we need to fix this. And I had heard from a friend about StoryBrand at one point. So I started looking into it, decided to get certified in the framework. There's their whole guide certification program. And basically, for anybody who doesn't know, it's like a marketing framework that's, pretty cool in that it's systemized. I love systems. I love, stuff like that. So kind of reading Building a Story Brand, the book, got into it. And then I ended up getting certified. And so it's kind of one of those things where you kind of see a problem in the market and you just know you're in the right place to solve it. You see like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a recurring problem. Basically, people are building websites over and over, following with StoryBrand. There's a very, I guess, somewhat formulaic approach to how you lay out a homepage, for example,
Hmm.
based on recommendations from, Donald Miller is the founder of StoryBrand. So, but people follow it very closely, even though you don't really have to follow that closely, but most people do. So there's this pattern I kept seeing over and over of people doing the same layouts, but everybody's building these from scratch. So it just kind of made sense to, like you were saying, like, why hasn't somebody built a template for it yet?
Hmm. Yeah.
So we thought, all right, let's go ahead and do it. So when I was actually at the first certification, I went ahead and started building the first template. I think either during the actual workshop, or maybe it was that night when I got back to the hotel I was staying at.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, so yeah, just started doing it then, and it's been the goal is to kind of solve that problem for people that don't have the money to invest in a full custom site. Like, why not have a template they can start with? And I can get into, I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but we basically kind of like wrestled with, do we do DIY versus done for
Yeah,
you, or
yeah.
some
Let's talk
mixed,
about it. 'Cause
or
there's a lot of people listening who are trying to figure this out for themselves. So, it's good to talk about it.
cool. Yeah. So you know, I think DIY is a great thing to offer to people, and I really like that idea. But one of my concerns, there's a couple of things. One is, if we were to sell DIY templates, you definitely sell at a lower price point. But the cool thing is, you're a lot closer to having that passive income, I think. With the exception being, like, and I don't have a lot of experience with this, so selling products
Hmm.
online. I'm more like productized services. So I'm wondering, okay, if I sell these templates, how much support am I going to have to do for these? And how much is that going to eat into profit margins? Also, what's the end result going to be for my clients? Are they going to actually get a great website if they buy a template, do it themselves?
Hmm.
So originally we were like, okay, let's sell our template for like $4.99, something like that, and then people can do it themselves. Well, we basically did that like one time, and then I was like, well, we have them put their stuff in themselves, and then we do a session to kind of clean it up for them afterwards, basically, is what we
Hmm.
were including. Then I realized, if we just add one extra hour of work, then and they give us the stuff up front, we do it for them. They have to learn hardly anything. It's one more hour of our time, and it adds huge value to them because it goes from a DIY product into a done for you
Done for
product.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, so we basically tripled the cost, made it 1,500 instead of 499, and then added 1 hour extra of work on our end to kind of fill it out, because since it's formulaic, we can ask the right questions up front. So we created like a kind of fill out form in Google Drawings that follows the exact format of our templates, so that basically
Hmm.
they could just fill in, hey, here's my actual text, here's what I'm thinking photo wise.
Yep.
Then they give it to us, and we build it in Squarespace. And I mean, it's not that hard to build in Squarespace, but as you know, there's still a barrier to entry for certain types of clients, and
Yeah.
so it just makes it even that much easier for them. So then they can pay 1,500 and get the full site built, instead of 500 for just a template. They have to still put in 20 hours of work themselves or something.
And what's the turnaround time?
Good question. So right now we're actually, so it's been selling pretty well. So we right now it's like 8 weeks. So there's two reasons for that. One is because through Knapsack, it's basically StorySite's the same team as Knapsack, right? So we just have
Okay.
two different brands, and so if we're busy with with Knapsack, we're doing these, basically we do these 1 day builds where we build site in 1 day. It scales up. Some sites are 2 day build or 3 day build, but most of the time it's like a 1 day build, and we can do two of those a week. So Tuesdays and Thursdays are our build days. So it's kind of like, okay, if we have those full, and like Mondays and Wednesdays are our meeting days, so we can't really squeeze
Hmm.
in a whole lot. We can do like one template a week with our current design capacity, right? So we
Hmm.
just hired another designer, and she's getting trained. She's almost finished being trained now. And so then that'll kind of open up the capacity to be like, okay, we can do more than one a week of these templates. And then that will be, closer to, like, the goal is to have it around 2 weeks. That's where we had it for a while. So I would
Right.
like it to be like, hey, you buy it, 2 weeks, it's done. In, basically all the client needs to do is give us their copy, and then show up
Yeah.
on a video call for an hour, and their site's built.
That's cool, man. Like the thing I love about this is there's so many different different, angles and approaches. And it sounds like in solving one problem, you always create another one, a
Yes.
better problem for yourself.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, demand problems are great problems to always have.
Yeah. I feel, yeah, I'm not complaining. Very great, very grateful for that, for sure.
Because then I feel like you can then always break off. So in hearing you describe the behind the scenes part about how you guys have your internal kind of a dock that you plug everything in, um, when I hear that, I think about that as another product for that's the actual DIY product that they would get off the shelf and learn how to use themselves
Yeah.
um, for creating possibly more websites. Um, but yeah, it's a great model, and especially because I think most people think about the templates originally just as the do-it-yourself kind of thing,
Right.
um, and I think solving that additional problem of okay, what do I put in here? Like, what kind of copy do I need?
Yes.
Is the biggest. That's been my biggest kind of I don't know what to call it. Like, yeah, the hidden problem behind all websites
Yes.
when you start off on Squarespace, because I think uh, the people who come to Squarespace are usually more creative and visually inclined,
Hmm.
and we're typically more attracted by something that just looks good first, and we'll think about all of the we won't even think about the persuasive elements unless you kind of call them out, and I think that's what the benefit of StoryBrand is. And for anyone who's not familiar with it, it's basically like a narrative. I look at it like a narrative framework for selling anything, and it approaches it from the perspective of the customer or the client versus typically we think about we have to put our brand up front. It's more so about putting them up front and helping them along in their story to solve a particular problem where you offer a specific solution, and help to guide them through whatever their ultimate goal is, and it allows you to do that really. Like, I use that framework for small pieces of content for,
Yeah.
like, 3-minute pieces of content. I'm like, all right, what's the problem here? What's the solution? What's the villain? um go through the whole thing, and then I'm like, all right, perfect, this is very easy.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. It
it works
really,
every time.
yeah, it gives you such a good starting point to create something that's useful because it helps you identify what customers' problems are. Yeah, like you said, the solutions. And some of the key principles you mentioned are super useful, like presenting yourself as the guide, and them as the hero in the story
Yeah,
is how their language, how they kind of put it. And everybody wakes up that morning, they're thinking, they're the hero in their own story. They don't think of you as like, oh, I need somebody to save me. They're thinking, hey, I'm gonna make this happen. I just need somebody to help me get there. And if you
yep,
present yourself as like a humble, like service oriented guy that's like, hey, I understand your problem. You identify it. You say what their problems are on your website so they can resonate with that. And then you show them what the solution is. And then you give them like a step by step process to get it done because, people don't want to walk into a fog. You know,
yeah,
they want to know like, oh, here's the 3 stepping stones I need to walk across and then I'm going to get to where I want to be.
yep. And once you see it, you start to like see it all around you. Your market and vision is now clear. And you're
For
like,
sure.
okay. um Especially when it's done well. All right, cool. So I want to go touch a little bit more on, I guess, what now, you've been doing this for some time, obviously. You've solved some good problems, and you've done it, I think, in a pretty elegant and graceful way. What's the future like for Knapsack Creative and Ben Manley?
Oh man. Uh, I could say so many things. I have lots of dreams. But I mean, one thing I'm really passionate about is systemization and creating good processes because I think it gives creative people a good framework to work within and kind of lets you be more creative if you have guidelines. So one thing I'm passionate about, as you probably noticed from our schedule, is that I love creating these, basically time boxing almost everything we do in our business. So Mondays and Wednesdays are days where we have meetings with clients. So maybe I'll have 4 to 6 meetings with different, potential clients we might work with. I'll like on a Monday, and then Wednesday, same. Tuesdays and Thursdays are completely blocked off for focus work, where each designer is working on one website project and finishing that day. So it's like this very organized way of thinking. So you just kind of plug and play these different modules into your schedule. So I love that because it decreases stress. It lets people focus. So one other piece of that is that on Fridays, we actually take Fridays completely. We're basically closed on Fridays to the public. So what we do is we have this whole system called the Friday Habit System that we've created. And that's something I'm passionate about. I started a podcast about it and stuff. But the whole principle is taking one day per week to work on your business instead of in your business all the time. And it involves, I won't get into all of it, but it involves things like capturing any ideas or issues that come up that week, and then going ahead and reviewing them as a team every Friday. So that morning, we talk through every good and bad thing that happened that week that we made a note of, and figure out how do we keep doing the good things? How do we fix the bad things by tweaking our processes and things like that? And then we take action on those that afternoon. So we go ahead and spend that day fixing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps us because, throughout the week, you're so busy working on client work. It's kind of hard to focus on that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things I'm passionate about, is just helping other businesses kind of systemize, you know, actually focusing on themselves, kind of like self-care for their business.
Yeah.
So the podcast is one thing. Another quick thing just is that with Knapsack, my dream is to kind of create a team of people that when I come up with a new idea or a new brand or a new service that I think would be good for the world, that I can just say, hey guys, here's my idea. Let's make it
Yeah.
happen. And then I can spin up a new brand. So I want to create lots of small creative companies,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily one big agency, but I want it to be like a lab where I can say an idea, have good people on the team, and we can execute it. And it's a lot like a local restaurant company here. And there's a guy, Steve Perry, and instead of like franchising one of his restaurants and turning it into like a Pizza Hut or something,
Mm-hmm.
he instead does lots of small concepts in our town and in local surrounding areas. But he has the team in place already from one or two restaurants to pull a couple people from that and start a new one. So I want to be able to have these ideas and say, okay, let's pull this designer from this team, this from this team, and we're going to start this new idea. Let's run it for 6 months, see if it's successful. If not, shut it down, no problem. If it is successful, then we'll build that team, and then I have a little bit more diverse of a income source with different brands. And once one succeeds, we can jump onto that ship and ride it.
Yeah. Dude, I love that, man. I love the systems approach. I was never able to crack it, or I haven't cracked it yet, and I'm still cracking it. I've regressed back to my 6 or 7 year old self, and I'm just starting from scratch with my 6 year old. So, but fortunately, I kind of have the time to do so. So I'm like working backwards.